All right, guys, welcome into the Alabama postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm Simone Eli along with Sinor tonight. This one just went final a little bit ago in Baton Rouge, Death Valley, as LSU pulls off an unbelievable overtime victory against Alabama, 32-31, the final in a top 10 matchup. As the college football playoff rankings just came out last week, they're sure to look different this week, Wes. When you think about how this one ended, I mean, I feel like we're still catching our breath a little bit, but
yes,
what a finish in Baton Rouge, and certainly not what Tide fans wanted to see for this outcome.
No, obviously a second loss is pretty much knocks them out of the playoff picture, I would think, unless something extremely crazy happens down the road. It kind of reminded me of the Tennessee game in a lot of ways. It just seems to keep going back and forth all night long, and obviously ends in a similar fashion with the visiting team, with Alabama losing on a visiting team's field, and then that team rushing the field and going crazy again. So, I think you used the right word right before we went on. Just really uncharacteristic play from Alabama on both sides of the ball tonight.
Yeah.
And penalties are still a big issue for this team.
No doubt about that. Thank you guys for the comments. If you're just tuning in to the Bama postgame show here on AL.com, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. Guys, in my opinion, here's the thing. We're going to focus a lot about the ending. We're going to focus a lot about Brian Kelly going for two, this being an overtime finish. But let's think mostly about the first three quarters of this game, Wes. Alabama does not find the end zone. They put up 9 points, all field goals. That 32 to 31 score is really deceiving as to what Alabama was able to do offensively. Bryce Young simply did not look like himself, had some major timing issues with his wide receivers. And Nick Saban had said going into this week in the press conference that this offense was just getting back into its rhythm coming off of that Bryce Young injury. So I had higher expectations for what we were going to see from Bryce Young after the bye week and really this offense as a whole. And it certainly did not play out that way, especially in the first three quarters of this game, as Alabama only put 9 points on the board.
Yeah, and you have to think if Alabama was more successful on offense early on in the game, that they probably have no issue winning.
It's a different game.
Winning this game, but they really took a long time to get going on offense. There was, it seemed like they could move the ball up until you get into the red zone, then you kind of run into some problems.
Yes.
I know in the first quarter, Bryce Young early on was hitting a lot of passes. They were moving the ball well, and then he threw an interception in the red zone, and that kind of put an end to that drive. And it just seemed like once they got closer to the end zone, they were running into problems and not able to convert first downs and everything.
Yeah.
So, like you said, I mean, that kind of puts you at a disadvantage when you're having to settle for field goal after field goal after field goal early on in the game when, if a few plays go a different way and maybe those are touchdowns. So I know that's frustrating for Alabama fans. But I mean, Bryce Young did look back to like his old self, like late in the game.
In moments,
it just seemed like it was just a little too late tonight.
In my opinion, I think Bryce Young, the it factor that he has, and we know that he has, takes over in the fourth quarter in a must-win situation. But that sort of consistency, that sort of playmaking needs to happen earlier in the game. So whether it's the play calling, whether it's the execution, the timing, coming off of that injury, there were some major issues. Because after that turnover, that nice drive that went down to the 5-yard line, 1st and goal, the turnover in the end zone, Alabama then proceeds to go 3 straight 3-and-outs, doing absolutely nothing, actually going backwards twice with multiple penalties, including a couple false starts, not what you want to see in a very, very hostile environment in Death Valley. But these are Nick Saban coach teams. The expectation, Wes, is very, very high for these programs, for these teams to not do a lot of the things that they did early in this game. It seemed like there were some adjustments at halftime to run the ball a little bit more, but still just not enough happening early on so that they weren't in this situation late. I've not listened to Nick Saban's press conference. I assume that's something that he's going to say. I assume that's something he's going to mention, though.
I think he just wrapped up his press conference just a little while ago. But, yeah, you have to think with all the things that Nick Saban preaches all the time about, playing mistake-free, being disciplined, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It just seems like this team, this year's team, the 2022 Alabama Crimson Tide, just has not been up to that standard that Nick Saban and Alabama fans have been used to over this dominant period that they've had over the last decade and a half since Nick Saban's been in Tuscaloosa. So, I don't know if this loss is necessarily just like a huge surprise to Alabama fans, because I do think that they were worried, obviously, after the Tennessee game. And even in that Mississippi State game, they did win 30-6 or whatever. But I don't even think the offense looked all that great against Mississippi State either.
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that surprise is the right word, Wes. I think it's more like shocked a little bit. Like, this hasn't happened. This is not the norm for Alabama to be a 2-loss team with 3 weeks left to go in the regular season. Not going to win the West. Not going to be in Atlanta for the championship game. Not going to be in the college football playoff. To know that there's going to be some bowl game against Notre Dame in December. That's not what Bama fans are used to. So surprised, shocked, disappointed, all of the above.
Yeah, for sure. It really kind of takes the wind out of your sails for the rest of the season. And I know,
absolutely.
Obviously, Alabama fans have gotten used to a certain standard and gotten used to being in the conversation in the playoffs all but 1 year, right? Since the playoffs were introduced. So they've only missed it once, and it appears that they're going to miss it again this year. But, hey, you can't win them all. You literally, you can't win them all. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that when you look at the landscape of college football, things are shifting. There's a reason that Tennessee has been able to have the turnaround that they've been able to have. There's a reason that LSU is able to have the success that they're having. In my opinion, that's called the transfer portal. It's called NIL. It is making it's making a shift in college football. Now, we just got a comment from Todd here that says the dynasty is over. I'm not sure that that's the way to put it, but what I would say is this. And listen, somebody else said it. I'm not saying it. Someone else said it, but I will tell you this. The domination is going to be different. And the playing field is much more straightened out, much more level than it used to be, or now than it used to be, because the NIL money totally changes the game. Recruiting is different now because of it. And it's not just Nick Saban doing his voodoo and getting the guys in there. I mean, Tennessee has ballers. LSU has guys. Georgia's killing it. And so the playing field is much more level than it used to be, and what Alabama fans have been able to get used to.
I agree. And the playing styles are different. Like there's just like so many different things. There's new coaches. I mean, we haven't even really gotten into Brian Kelly necessarily, but there are new faces in the league trying different things. Man, I just a crazy game, and just the Brian Kelly going for two there at the end.
Kudos to him, though.
It shows a lot of guts.
Listen,
this is your first year in the SEC. This is the biggest game of your schedule, and the game's on the line, and that's what you decide to do. Like, pays off. Bro, big risk, big reward.
And honestly, in my opinion, LSU had the momentum in this game. Even when Bama took a 1-point lead, even when Alabama regained the lead later on that pass to Ja'Cory Brooks, LSU maintained the momentum. And I think that Brian Kelly knew that. Brian Kelly has lost to Nick Saban before. That he's playing with house money. They're not expected to beat Alabama, despite this game being in Baton Rouge. So why not go for it? What are you going to lose? Yeah. The game? Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, you're going to lose the game. You're already not going to, probably be one of the top echelon teams in the country. Now you're setting yourself up to potentially have that opportunity in the West, and then later on down the road, who knows what Ole Miss is going to do. But Alabama, a 2-loss SEC team, 1 loss in the West, certainly puts them in a position that's not on the outside looking in.
Yeah, for sure. I think this moves LSU to the number 1 in the West, and Ole Miss is at 2, and now Alabama has dropped to 3rd in the West, which is crazy. This is November that we're talking about, And so it's just like uncharted territory almost, it feels like, for Alabama.
It certainly is that. And the timing is working out in a really ironic way, as Alabama now goes on the road to Ole Miss in a pivotal game when it comes to the West. You really never know how things are going to pan out, but 2-loss teams don't make it in the playoffs. They just don't. 2-loss teams, even who win the conference, don't make it in the playoffs, Wes. They don't.
Yeah, have we never had a 2-loss team in the playoff?
Maybe one time. I know for several years.
I agree with you, though.
But I mean, it's probably not in the cards. It is what it is. There have been issues throughout this entire season, and I think that from what I see in the comments, from what you see throughout social media, fans understand that this team is not the caliber team that Nick Saban has had in the past. They're undisciplined. They've had issues offensively, whether it's Bryce Young injuries, timing issues, you name it. It's just not the same that we've seen in the past.
Not the same. Penalties. I mean, you can go on and on about some of the issues that Alabama's had, which is crazy because they are, number 6 in the country. They'll drop a little bit, but they've been in the top 10 all year long. But there's still issues that you can point to, even leading up to this game, that you feel like they're starting to crack a little bit in some different areas. And it kind of all came together in that Tennessee game, and it all kind of came together tonight where it's just like they just weren't able to put together a complete game and get out with the win. So obviously a heartbreaker for Alabama fans, especially to have two of them like this where, it comes down to the wire and the final play of the game, fans rush the field. I know that's gotta sting. So we'll have to see what the future holds for this team, and this Ole Miss game coming up next week is going to be really interesting too. Like you mentioned, going to Oxford, the Lane Kiffin storyline, all that stuff, coming back around. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on next week's game?
I mean, we'll see. It's on the road, and I think that's difficult. Alabama has proven to have some issues playing on the road. Playing on the road in the SEC is difficult regardless of where you go. But when every single team wants to give Alabama their best, it makes it even more difficult for Alabama specifically to go on the road and have to get it done. They have to do it against Ole Miss, then Austin Peay at home, and then the Iron Bowl at home. Auburn went into overtime tonight. So it's just been a wild night for SEC fans in the state of Alabama, guys. What an incredible evening just for college football. It's crazy.
It is. And it's my favorite sport. College football is my favorite sport. I like to see all the craziness. I'm usually for all the chaos. Not to say that I'm like pulling for anybody tonight or anything like that, but this is just kind of what makes college football so fun and interesting. It's just these games that go down to the wire and all the possibilities and all the other teams moving up and down every week. So another thriller tonight from this Alabama team, and we'll just have to see what's in store next week.
We will see, guys. Alabama falls to LSU on the road in Death Valley in overtime. A game for the ages for sure. If you're a Tiger fan, for Tide fans, one that you do not want to remember forever. Alabama moves on to Ole Miss next week, then Austin Peay, and then the Iron Bowl. We will, of course, follow the Tide throughout the end of the season, and then see where things end up for postseason play in the bowl game. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Alabama Postgame Show, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. For Wes Sinor, I'm Simone Eli. We will see you back here next week.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.